Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast, powered by ISOFIT, Firefly Recovery, and Engage Movement. ISOFIT is my go-to for all things isometric strength training. For more on ISOFIT, be sure to check out .com. Firefly Recovery is the official recovery provider of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. For more on Firefly, be sure to check out recoveryfirefly.com. This episode is also powered by Dr. Ray Gorman, the founder of Engage Movement. Learn how to boost your income without relying on sessions and get a free training on the blended practice model by following Ray Gorman DPT on Instagram. Enjoy. Tyler, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today, man. And huge shout out to our guy, Ray Gorman, for getting us connected and all the great work he's doing in the space that way. For people who aren't familiar with you and all the incredible stuff you've been doing yourself, would you mind filling them in a bit about who you are and all the amazing things you've got going on, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I graduated in 2018 from PT school in upstate New York, a little town called Utica, which is my hometown. My fiance, Courtney, and I actually traveled for about 5 years. We were taking travel contracts all over the country. And then eventually we settled down in Denver. About 3/4 of the way through our travel career, I officially jumped ship, if you may. I started not taking any more contracts, and I took my online strength and conditioning company that was slowly becoming less of a side hustle and made it my full-time thing. When I moved to Denver, shortly after that, kind of found a person who owned a gym that we really vibed well. So I opened a small cash practice in Denver. Around that time, I started working with Ray, who I'm sure we will talk about. And now I treat 8 to 12 hours a week in person, kind of 3 to 4 hour slots. And then I work with somewhere between 25 to 35 people remotely who are navigating issues, casually ambitious athletes, if you may, who are navigating persistent pains, but want to do training. They want to do fitness things. They want to do outdoor things, and they want to get back to that. And then I teach continuing education certifications for pain-free performance specialist certification. So traveling anywhere between 1 to 3 times a month all over the country, teaching coaches, trainers, physical therapists how to give people access to quality, hard training in the presence of pain, right? Putting them in an environment where they can express a high level of hard work without irritating things. And I guess the last one is that I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book right now for casually ambitious athletes and active adults. Give them a guide to navigate pain, not just the best correctives or the right warm-up, but how to manage a flare-up in the middle of it, how to create goals that are realistic for phase 3 performance phase, but also make sense right now when you're going through rehab, how to manage your stress to help bring down pain levels, all that good stuff, the physical, the mental, and the emotional. So that is me in my elevator speech, we'll say.
You're clearly doing some amazing work in the space, Tyler. And one of the most impressive things about you is how you have time to juggle all these different things, from working as a PT to teaching to writing and traveling. Like, there is so much going on. And it's so interesting to hear that you're from Utica, because I actually grew up in northeastern PA, upstate New York area, went to the Finger Lakes every summer as a kid growing up. So it's so interesting to kind of hear that kind of shared kind of background that way a little bit. And like you, I like to do a lot of things myself that way, whether that be traveling or working a lot of different things and kind of developing different projects. And one of the things that I learned, and this is about the time that I got connected with Ray that way, is you can't do traditional physical therapy working 40 to 50 hours a week in a brick and mortar location while also trying to travel, while also trying to teach, while also trying to write a book, while also trying to do all these other incredible things. It's unfortunately, the system just doesn't seem to be designed for people like us. And on top of that, a lot of the people we like to work with, like you mentioned, athletes and active individuals, a lot of the traditional rehab models are not built with them in mind either. I think a lot of the times the athletes kind of leave their rehab experience feeling like they're missing something and that they wanted more, but they weren't given that. So I feel like the entire system is really designed for people like us to almost blaze our own path forward and kind of go a different route, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said this many times to peers, to people inside Ray's mentorship, to patients. There's really good care in the traditional model. There are really good clinicians. I have friends and colleagues who are doing great stuff. There's just a ceiling that the people I enjoy working with, they hit that ceiling eventually, and there's just kind of a need for more. Aside from that, right, the quality of the clinical care, I wasn't happy in that avenue. I didn't like delivering care that way. And you kind of said it perfectly. It's like that phase two, phase three rehab, right? If someone has an ACL repair, go get your visits, go get those high touch points, seeing someone pretty frequently. But like there's gonna come a time, I tell a lot of folks when they call and ask if they should see me, I'm like, there's going to come a time when you feel like the candle kind of burnt out and there's like still stuff to do. That's when it's time for us to get to work, right? Like taking you from I pretty kind of feel good every day to like, okay, I'm actually feeling good when I'm doing fun things. That's where it's time for us to go. And don't get me wrong, I've seen many people, post-operatively right away in the acute phase. It's just it has to match that person's fiscal abilities, freedom.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things that took me a long time to realize that way, and I know this is something Ray talks about a lot, and I believe you talk about it as well, is, we kind of go through school with this kind of belief that way that we have to be the ones to provide everything for people. When in reality, a lot of people don't need our like actual presence there. They just need our knowledge to kind of guide them along their journey from step one to step 100 of the roadmap, if you will. And I found that you don't have to be physically present with someone, or in fact, you don't even have to be, at the session at the same time as them. You can do a lot of these things asynchronously that way. And it took me a long time to really grasp that concept. And I feel like, looking back at our schooling that way and our, PT school that way, obviously they can't provide everything for us, but I felt like so much of the emphasis was what you have to do in person when you're right in front of someone and they become dependent on you, when in reality, I'd much prefer the independence model, for lack of a better way to put it that way. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, just going from that travel PT role and having that S&C background. How did you kind of go about developing your own independence framework for operating as a clinician that way? And then on top of that, what kind of things have you maybe found as like a little challenge to that? Or have you ever had patients push back about that at all?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I was practicing in the, traditional model, I was in outpatient. I did home health. We did acute care. We even did a COVID hospital for about 7 or 8 months, which was a wild ride. But, I think there was a point in my travel career where I started to recede from, we'll say, the traditional approach. And I don't think it was a negative way. I think I was just coming into my own, right? I was feeling a little bit more confident about prescribing or recommending the visit frequencies that I thought were best for those people. I was giving a little bit more of a robust supplemental plan, home exercise program that would allow people to actually come in less frequently. And I think just my mindset was kind of going that way. So there were people I was seeing that were higher level in terms of movement abilities that I was decreasing frequency. Now, at that time, there wasn't the amount of support I could give now with something like a prescriptive exercise program and remote support. But by the time I went into my own practice, the caveat here is that I had been working with people remotely for 6 years. I was building strength programs and kind of these strength or fitness/rehab programs for 6 years. So by the time I went on my own, it was a bit more seamless than some may experience. I think that combined with the fact that people who are going to see me, a physical therapist who has his table set up in a gym, it was a one-on-one small group training gym, but these were active people. Those are the groups, the demographic that are going to be more likely appropriate for something like one time a week, one time every other week. And the other thing that, made it easy, made it more seamless was learning how to deliver and pitch and we'll say sell something like a prescriptive exercise program or remote support from Ray, right? Like when I see someone in an eval, that remote support, which means they're getting the home exercise program remotely, they're able to me outside of visits, that is baked into my explanation of what I think they need, my clinical recommendation. So when I say something like, hey, I think we're going to probably need one time a week for a few weeks, and then when things get more intense, you're going to need more time to progress. We're going to go out to 2 times a week, maybe even 3. The good thing is you'll be able to get that support from me. You're actually going to save money in the long run, not seeing me as frequently. You don't have to make that drive. So yeah, for lack of a better way of explaining it, it was easy when I had the support of something like a prescriptive exercise program.
To the point that you just made about in the long run, it'll save people money. It also saves them a drastic amount of time. And one of the things that I've been learning lately is people don't like to waste their time whatsoever. And a lot of times people would rather see you one time a week and then have 2 to 3 hours extra per week on their own to do whatever they want than spend that time sitting in a brick and mortar clinic, chilling on a heating pad for 20 minutes and then sitting on ice for 20 minutes. I don't even know why those things are considered skilled care anymore, but for some reason, people spend a lot of time on those things. And I've found people are getting kind of generally tired and annoyed by it. And I think, that's again, just going back to that point, that this is why I think we needed an evolution in the rehab framework. And this is why the work of individuals such as yourself is so essential to push the field forward. Is the way we've always done things is not working anymore, and people are tired of it. They don't want to waste their time. They're busier than ever. They're getting pulled in so many different directions. And, maybe that could even be a component of why they're coming to see us in the first place, right? Like, hey, if you're getting pulled in 20 different directions because, life in modern day America is very demanding and stressful, and all of a sudden we can help you from a rehab standpoint while also not adding too much to your schedule, too much to your plate, that's a transaction that many are willing to make. And on that note as well, I use that word transaction intentionally because, like you mentioned, there is a sales component or sales element to this. And I think that's something that a lot of providers get rather uncomfortable about. They're not really educated on sales. They don't know what sales is and so on that way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that a little bit. Do you ever feel like it's maybe not even a sales pitch to the client? It's more so just kind of like a conversation where you just kind of mutually agree on what they need and how you're going to provide it. And it's just a matter of, hey, there's a price to it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the many, many calls that I've had with other, physical therapists trying to build this kind of hybrid practice model. The one thing that I keep saying is like, you're just telling the truth realistically, right? Like when you go see a physician, an MD, and let's say you have radiculopathy, pretty significant, it's acute phase. The physician says, like, you need gabapentin. I think you need 300 milligrams of gabapentin every single day. They're telling you the truth, meaning what they think you need right now. I'll own that there might be some incentive there, but like, let's just say that they're telling the truth. The patient, you have the opportunity to say yes or no, and both of you just kind of go on with the plan of care. It's no different in our world. When I'm done seeing someone, I truly believe that the most effective setup is going to be some sort of synchronous in-person setup that gets thinner over time with remote support that is going to get them as close to the outcomes they would like as quickly as possible. It's going to prevent massive flare-ups. It's going to allow them to progress quicker. I'm just telling the truth. The reason people struggle with sales, in my opinion, the biggest reason is because they're afraid of being told no. And that's the difference between, I think our adjacent providers and us. They have a level of conviction around what they think somebody needs, that they're not afraid of the no. If anything, they expect the no, but they're just telling you the truth. Now, sometimes that level of confidence can go a little too far, right? But if you want to get good at sales, you need to do so many that you become not numb to no, but you understand where the no stand in the process, and you know how to make adjustments after that. When I was first trying to do this thing and deliver this hybrid practice model to my patients, I was nervous that they would balk and they would say, I'm good for now. And, many of them do, but they come back around. A lot of times they're okay with half of it. And then I need to prove to them that the other half is just as valuable as I'm saying. And that's a part of a business. You have to prove not your worth, but you have to prove the value of the thing you're trying to sell.
I think that's such a great point. And one of the things that I've learned in relation to sales, I've been reading a lot of Jordan Belfort's work lately, and he has a little straight line sales system where he says, hey, every single one is the same. They're here. You need to get them to here. So walk them down that straight line. And one of the things that I've been kind of learning along that process is, to your point about the word no, how many assumptions I made when someone said no. I would just hear no and then stop there and say, well, they said no. It's probably because they can't afford it, or it's probably because they don't, maybe they don't need it. Maybe they know something that I don't, whatever it is. I just start to insert all of these different assumptions into that to kind of justify their stance and position. When in reality, I now look at that no as like an opportunity to maybe extend the conversation and dig in a little bit deeper. Oh, they said no. Hey, why is that? Is it a financial thing where, hey, maybe you can't afford it right now, but maybe we could come to some kind of agreement that works. There's different things like payment plans that exist now that make that a little bit more accessible for people. Maybe it's something about the perceived value. So then it's a matter of, hey, how do I raise the perceived value of my services that way? Is there something that I can add in addition to what I'm already offering, that makes this individual not just more likely to say yes? Because I think that's the other trap here, is people are so in on sale volume, sale volume, sale volume. That's not the main incentive here. The main incentive is to provide so much value for the person that it's almost foolish for them to say no, because they're getting so much from you and their life is that much better because of all that you're providing for them. It's just a matter of, if they perceive that you're not going to make their life as good as they want for the value that's exchanged, the money that's exchanged, what can I add to maybe sweeten that deal and make it a little bit better for them that way? And I think that that's very much an individualized case by case scenario. But the more I've kind of studied sales and learned to maybe just kind of check myself with some of the assumptions, I feel like, to your point, the more natural and the more smooth it becomes. And it just almost doesn't even feel like selling, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, look, Dan, I mean, the best thing you had said, and I loved the whole thing, but the best thing was in the beginning, which was asking questions, right? And maybe those questions come after some sort of objection. Instead of making assumptions as to why they say no, get a better understanding. Maybe it's their assumptions of what the best care they need. Even ironically, even though maybe that previous care didn't do it for them, they still think that the old model is the way. And because you did not recommend that, they're like, oh, that's not for me. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, like, ask early and often. One of the most effective things I have found for myself is, after we have our kind of little, hello greeting formality when that person comes in and we sit down, I kind of give them a mini rundown of how things are going to go, so they feel like they have control over the process of the next 45 minutes to an hour. And I ask them what they want to leave with. That is literally my question. Hey, what do you want to leave with today? Do you want to leave feeling better and we'll talk about the plan the next day? Do you want to leave with an idea of how to do this on your own? Do you want to leave with a plan? Whatever it is, tell me what you would like to walk out the door with. And that gives me not only simply an understanding of where they're coming from and what they want, but it gives me those tools to add to the value, right? When you were saying earlier, it's like, maybe you put a little something on top to sweeten the deal. That doesn't mean giving away more stuff. It means creating unique value for that person. The stuff you are already doing, frame it in a way, and this is truthful, but frame it in a way that actually makes sense for what they feel like they need. If they say they want structure, then you talk about structure. If they say that they want manual intervention, then you talk about how that will play into the entire plan. It's just a matter of, like, I hate to say it, but meeting them where they're at.
To the point you just made on framing, I found that is an essential art and skill that takes so much time to develop that way. What kind of insights do you have for people who want to learn more about how to frame their conversations specific to the clientele in front of them?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, find a way to ask multiple questions that you can help you get an understanding of what they're looking for. It might be as simple as like, hey, what are you looking for from a rehab program? Maybe compared to what you got in the past, or like, what do you think you need, right? What are you expecting from me as your physical therapist, or if you're saying coach, whatever it is, right? What are you expecting from me? And as that person is talking, I keep it really simple with my notes. I write down single words, literally the words that they say, right? If they say structure, I'm going to write down structure. If they say framework, I'll write down that instead, right? If they say consistent, a plan that helps me stay consistent, I'm going to write down consistent. Try to find 3, 4, 5 words that really hit on what they said, so that you can revisit them verbally as you make your recommendations or your pitch, if you may. You know, before that, right? So that's a great plan, regardless if you have a good sales process or not. But I think you get really effective, you know, and you can disagree or agree here, Dan, is like, you can start to manipulate the process once you are good at the process, right? So Ray gave me, and all of us inside of the performance provider growth model, somewhat of a script. And I would run that script. It's not a verbatim script. It's kind of a bullet point. It tells you what process of the sales process you're in. And him and I would talk about it. I would do it. I would tell him what went wrong. Do it. I would tell him what went wrong. Sometimes I would record it. And that was multiple times before I was able to start manipulating and kind of freelance a little bit. You just got to get good at doing something that works that someone else has done before, in my opinion.
Quick break, because if you're a rehab professional sick of burnout, this could be your answer. Engage Movement's blended practice model is a proven system built by Dr. Ray Gorman, a PT who walked away from the 55-hour-a-week grind and built a blended practice model that doubled his income while working less than 25 hours a week, and he didn't have to rely on the traditional way of selling sessions to do so. It's all about blending remote and in-person services, stacking monthly recurring revenue, and building a business that finally supports your life, not the other way around. This model isn't just theory. Real providers, including myself, are creating lives of freedom and flexibility without being tied to their schedule. And as a listener, you get free access to the complete training. DM my name, Dan, to @RayGormanDPT on Instagram and receive your free breakdown on the model. I love that you said that. And as you were talking, it made me think back to when I was in physical therapy school and we were learning all these different protocols in and out, these exercises, these precautions, and so on that way. And when you first get out of school, you follow those protocols almost verbatim because that's what you know. And then over time, maybe you start to realize, hey, maybe 3 sets of 10 of this isn't enough. Maybe we need more reps, more sets, more holds, whatever it is that way. You add more as you go along, but you start from this kind of like scripted protocol, if you will, because that's what you know. The same is true in sales. It's just a matter of taking, hey, this is what I know. You do that enough, and then you start to kind of see little evolutions along the journey that way. So I feel like once physical therapists and once rehab providers and even strength coaches for that matter start to do this, they start to kind of draw the connections about how similar it is to a lot of the other stuff that they're doing. Yeah. It's just because it's unfamiliar to us, because it's language we haven't done before, it's a little uncomfortable at first. But once you get into it, my goodness, the whole world opens up to you. And I think to the point that you made very early on, it's just the amount of different things that you do. It allows you to kind of take your career any one of a million different directions. And that's one of the many things that I love about this space is you can do so many different things with it. There's a lot of jobs where it's like, hey, you know, if I'm an electrical engineer, I kind of have to do electrical engineering at the end of the day. You know, there's only so many different routes I can go with that. But with physical therapy, the sky is really the limit that way. And I feel like a lot of times I hear people talking about the negatives of the profession, but I prefer to flip it to the positives. It's just a matter of, are you willing to do what it takes to make those positives possible for you and your life?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think with any profession, you know, it's a matter of finding the piece of that profession that you know lights your fire, and then delivering that fire in whatever way you think is the best for you, right? So for a long time, I thought that remote coaching was going to be it, and that's changed over the years. You know, and now there's like speaking in my life, there's writing in my life, and that came from my doctorate degree that I'm still paying for. And I was salty for a little bit. I was, because I thought that I was owed something for what I paid. I was owed something for the time I put in. But realistically, the money I paid and the time I put in made it easier for me to be proactive now. I would have to be active, proactive. I would have to be in control of my own professional career either way. I just invested in a way that now allows me to be better at being proactive, we'll say.
I love the way you worded that. And one of the things that sticks out to me, and you kind of alluded to this, is there are a lot of young professionals I'm talking with now, and especially students that I've had that way. I had one that told me, I don't want to work a 40-hour week as a clinician, and I deserve a minimum of a six-figure salary to start. And we're in the middle of nowhere, small town Maryland here, where that's just not really a thing for starting out that way. But I've seen a rise in this just sort of what we deserve and this entitlement sense that way. And it sounds like for you, you kind of battled a little bit of that yourself. And I think everyone does, but you're kind of at this point now where it's like, hey, look, like I'm able to go out and kind of provide for myself and go my own path and, provide so much more for me than what I kind of felt I deserved that way. How did you go about combating that feeling of, hey, look, I put in all this time, all this work, I got this doctorate degree, I deserve X, Y, and Z? Because I feel like it's everywhere nowadays. And it's a mindset that on one hand, I understand it because we should be advocating for more. But by the same token, I feel like more is available to you if you're willing to just put your head down and go grab it.
Yeah. Well, first I have a question. Where in Maryland do you live?
I'm by Ocean City, Maryland right now.
Oh, okay. My first ever contract was well, we lived in Glen Burnie, but I worked in Dundalk and like just the outskirts of Baltimore. So small world.
It really
Yes.
is, man.
I just had a conversation with a previous client yesterday. She's kind of making a transition in her job, and I think the advice I gave her is relevant for anyone who is coming out of school, whether you're going to work for somebody or you're going to do your own thing and you want to make sure your profession is what you want. There is going to be a suck that you have to be okay with in any scenario for a little while. Ray and I talked about this last week. If you go and work for somebody, you go and work in a traditional model, the suck is you are working for someone else and you have to put in time after work to build your business. If you come right out of school and you do the entrepreneur thing, the suck is you're not going to make a lot of money and you have to hustle your butt off, seeing people at crazy times, doing the sales thing, doing the content creation thing. Maybe, there is no avoidance. I think what social media has done is it has allowed us to cognitively skip the gap between I'm just starting and I built this really cool thing. And people take the pieces of the really cool built thing and say, I want that now. And you can have some of those things. You just have to be okay with other things kind of sucking, right? I mean, when I stopped taking contracts and I decided that I was going to go all in on my business, I was making enough money that I had to pull from my savings every week in order to keep our lifestyle fairly similar. So that's one thing that sucked. I had the freedom. I was working 20, 30 hours a week. I was making content. It was this cool thing, but I was pinching. And also I spent 5 years building a savings that allowed me to be okay with not making virtually anything for, I don't know, 8 to 12 months. So, for the people who are just kind of coming out of school or maybe just building their thing, you have to give something if you want what you want, at least in the beginning. And that's going to happen in phases. Dan, I'm sure you've experienced this. Your business is doing well, things are smooth. And then you hit this patch where you want to implement a new strategy or you're trying to take on another arm of the business. And you're like, sometimes I've told my fiance, I'm like, look, the next 3 months are going to be weird. It's going to be that kind of 5 to 9 thing again. And I promise it won't last forever, but I'm going to finish my day stuff and I'm going to come home and eat dinner. And then I'm going to go hide away and I'm going to be doing the thing. And it is what it is. You can't have everything at the same time. I think that's the best way to say it.
I think that's so well said. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people don't quite understand until they're in it themselves that way, until they're kind of in the trenches. They realize just how dirty you have to get sometimes that way. And to your point, there is sacrifices that have to be made. There is long hours that have to be put in. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions I see about a more remote practice model, or blended practice model, I should say, right? Is people, for some reason, have it in their head that it's going to be significantly less work. And now I can just work 2 hours a day and print money because, it's remote, it's blended or whatever that way. When in reality, you're still putting the hours in. It's just maybe it's not a very typical 9 to 5 in a brick and mortar clinic. Maybe it's 4 hours here, 4 hours there. I mean, we even talked with James Johnson earlier this year on the podcast about this. And he said, he's like, when I go on family vacations, my laptop comes with me and I do work on the plane. I do some work at nights when we're on vacation. He's like, on the bright side, we can go anywhere in the world and I still have money coming in, but I'm still working even when I'm on vacation. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that side of this. They don't understand that there's constant work put in and there's constant dedication and commitment. And the other thing I hear a lot from people, and it just makes me laugh every time, is, we're going to grow it and scale it so much to the point where I don't have to be involved anymore. And I just tell them good luck, because the bigger you get, the more issues you start to run into. And I didn't realize it until we started to grow and scale our practice. It's like, oh, we just hired 3 new clinicians. Great. I didn't think about this or that, and all these different things that you never thought of happening now occur. And it's like, shoot, now what do I do? Because I didn't prepare for it. And it's kind of forced me into this line of thinking that I call like a pre-mortem. And I do it with almost everything I do right now. Is before I do something, I stop and I think and collect my thoughts and say, like, what things could cause this to fail? What things could cause this to absolutely blow up in my face? And, I don't necessarily consider it paralysis by analysis. I just consider it prepping for the worst case scenario. And I found the more prepared you are for those things, the more equipped you are if they happen, because not everything goes smooth in this space, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's similar to building a business that you want, similar to the phases of healing. First, I will say, if you're early in your career, whether it's an entrepreneurship career, you're going to do that eventually, you need to get away from thinking that you're going to build this thing so that you can exit this thing. Maybe that happens, but the best exiters had built it for them first, and then eventually they just get good at scaling and exiting. That's like 3 businesses later, right? So instead of thinking like, how can I build this so I can step away, build the next level, step away? It's like, how can I just build this where I'm extremely happy at this level? And then the person I put there will also be extremely happy, right? So it's like, I have spent all of this time not trying to build a business that allows me to do less. It's more so like, what problems am I okay with? What things that aren't awesome am I okay with? For me, I wasn't okay with seeing 2 people an hour, 3 people an hour, but I am okay with, writing 4, 5, 6 programs in a row, or spending time making content or writing emails for my newsletter. Like, those aren't awesome things. Ironically, I don't love writing programs, but like, that is the lesser evil in my decision making. The other thing is, like, I see decisions about my business as a long scale process. I'm going to make this decision. There's going to be things that aren't ideal, whether it's just not structured the way I want, or things go wrong, like you said. And then what could that look like on the back end, right? So there's that like inflammatory phase, things kind of go wrong. And then when we get through the proliferative in the remodeling phase, on the back end, am I okay with how things are? And then I can iterate and move forward again. So my biggest advice is, like, stop trying to build things so that you can exit from it. Build things so that you love sitting in it.
I love that advice, because if you build something that's so good, you don't want to exit it at all, right? Like, I think about it kind of like that dream car analogy, right? If you go out there and you buy your dream car, whatever it is, or, you go out there and you spend $500,000 on a boat because you finally made it, and you throw that boat in the Finger Lakes and you're on the boat. Do you want to get off it? No, you want to stay on it, right? You finally have that thing that you've always wanted. And for some reason, people look for the exit from that. And it's like, I think that there's a lost art about being happy and fulfilled with the life that you've built and how far you've made it. Now, That's not to say become complacent and just stop there, but you can certainly do a lot if you just kind of take a look at kind of what you've built and find the things to be thankful for within it. And I think that that attitude of gratitude goes hand in hand with just this entire space. This, as a rehab provider, that way, it's like, how can I be thankful for the opportunity to work with someone and help someone? Like, I think we take for granted all the different things that we have to be thankful for, from our own kind of physical abilities to our ability to help restore those for others. And just kind of some of the stories that we get because of that. It's like how very few people can do the kind of things that we do that way. And it's really, truly a blessing at the end of the day. I think the other piece to that as well is we are able to do that in any sense, in any capacity, whether we're physically in front of someone or whether we're, thousands of miles away on a call with them that way. We're able to provide that high quality, life-changing type of service, really. But one of the things we need is we need them to kind of be, I call it equally yoked. I'm not sure if that's the best term, but we need them to be invested in the process as well. And we need feedback from them. We need to make changes for our clients that way. And that's something that I found is rather easy to do when I'm right in front of someone, because they give me that right away. Like, hey, this doesn't feel right. Or maybe I just see something that way. When I'm thousands of miles away, I think having some kind of process in place to check in and get that feedback is just as important as throwing it out there, right? To quote Maya Angelou, you can't go through life with a catcher's mitt in both hands. You have to throw something back. So I've got my glove up and I'm ready to catch whatever my clients throw back at me. What's that process like for you? And what kind of advice do you have for individuals interested in, more of a blended practice model? I keep using that term here. As far as that process of getting feedback from their clients, good feedback that can help them make the correct decisions, because I feel like that's sometimes a little bit difficult to do.
So whenever I bring a client on, there's a ton of front loading. If any of my peers listen to this from my PT class, they're going to laugh, because one of our professors used to always say, like, we're going to front load some information. But when we get on our first call or first couple of calls, I'm setting expectations. Like, hey, listen, this is a very communicative process. I need you to tell me when things are not okay, or when they are okay. Do not be the filter for me. Let me be the filter. That's kind of why you hired me, right? And it's not because I think I'm a better filter. It's because our combined efforts are going to make this the most effective, versus if you just kind of assume that something's not a big deal, good or bad, I might not be able to adjust the way you want me to. So that's the first thing, setting expectations. The other thing is getting pretty clear and specific on your instructions inside something like the program, right? So every exercise that I prescribe virtually, there is comments. There are things that I say, like, hey, make sure you comment the weight, comment the RPE, which needs an explanation of what that is, and let me know if this hurts, or give me a 0 to 10 pain scale. Maybe even the session itself, I'm collecting objective data. 0 to 10 pain before you started, 0 to 10 pain after you started, right? These are things that allow me to start tracking. And I will tell them, listen, sometimes you're going to put stuff in there and I won't say a word, because we don't need to talk about it. So I don't want you to see my lack of response as an indication you should stop doing it. I'm tracking this data over time. And if there becomes a change in that pattern, that's when we're going to talk about things. So yeah, I mean, I always start folks with synchronous questions, partially because I want to understand, but also because I want to teach them how to throw it back. Ray talks about this. Like, sometimes you need to teach patients or clients how to do the thing that they need to do. And sometimes asking a simple 0 to 10 pain question, even if it doesn't really matter, is starting to create internal awareness and connections between how they feel and what they're doing, so that you can actually be effective. And, a lot of times I'll message them and say, like, hey, you mentioned this on this day, let's talk about it. So now we have this freedom piece. Now I've got to spend a collection of 30 minutes throughout the day going back and forth with a patient or a client, and I'm locked into that conversation. I have a responsibility to do that, but there is freedom within it that I'm not sitting in front of them. I don't have to rush through a conversation when someone else is there. So we're just kind of going back to that give and take. But I would say, in terms of throwing it at them, I'm very clear on what I need for them to be as effective as they want, and to help them throw it back to me I am very synchronous with what I ask them in at first, and then we back off over time.
I think that's a great process. And it sounds like one that's ever evolving because as
Yeah.
you kind of start out, it's like, hey, look, these things work, these things didn't, just like we talked about before in relation to the protocol analogy. It's like you start with something that might be a little bit more structured, it might be a little bit more scripted. And then over time, you start to kind of add your own little elements to it. And one of the things I found is even if you're just having a conversation with someone just like this, that way, if you can just get them talking, you can learn probably 90% of what you need to know just from that
Yeah.
conversation that way. It's just a matter of being willing to take a few minutes, sit down, sit across from them, whatever it is that way, and get them going a little bit. And I think that the more you master the art of communication, the easier this whole process is. And it kind of comes back to that concept of, PT school then, again, just coming full circle. Yes, it prepares you so well from a knowledge standpoint, from anatomy and physiology and beyond that way. But some of these other skills, whether that be sales, whether that be communication and people skills or whatever that way, those are the kinds of things that tend to be missed. And I think it's some of those skills that really set you apart as a clinician. I'm by no means the most skilled clinician, but I'm willing to bet that I've had such great impacts on people because of the way I treat them, because of the way we have our conversations and so on that way. And I think that those skills are sometimes just as valuable or potentially more valuable than the actual skills and what you're providing that way. I might not provide a perfect grade 2 versus a grade 3 mobilization. I might be 10% over the line. And you know what? That's okay because at the end of the day, we have such a good relation back and forth that even though I'm going, 10% more than I should on a low grade mobilization, just making that up, we're still going to get the outcome that we're after.
Yeah, yeah. And it comes back to asking questions. I found myself afraid to ask patients things in the beginning because I was worried I wouldn't know how to respond, or it would be a negative answer, like it doesn't feel good, or things aren't going well, or they don't like the thing, or they would offer an additional problem or additional layer that I wouldn't know how to answer. And here's the thing, right? I think deep down people know that as the expert, the authority in the two-person relationship here, your expertise is not necessarily in knowing how to do everything. It's knowing how to navigate everything and knowing how to recognize, patterns. So if we look at this from an authenticity standpoint, asking questions, as long as it's authentic, is going to strengthen the bond. It's going to give you more insight. So you have to stop guessing and giving them things that you think they need because you're coming from a place of being misinformed. And, if we really look at outcomes, right, there was a study done back in, I think, 2022. They found that trust is the strongest manipulator of patient outcomes. The protocol, the exercise prescriptions, the manual interventions all matter. But the thing that makes it the most potent, as in your treatment, the most potent, is how much the patient trusts you. And they're going to trust you if they think they give a shit about them. Sorry, but if you care about them, right? If you care about how things feel, how things are going. And it really comes down to asking questions. And you're not going to get good at navigating a dark room unless you go in that dark room more. You got to talk more. You got to ask more questions. And if you don't have patients to talk to right now, start talking to other people. Start filming yourself talking about a concept that you think is correct or that you know a lot about, and put it out there. Let the good and the bad come so you get used to it all.
Absolutely. I mean, to that point about just caring and the factor of just, give a damn about your patients, for lack of a better way to put it. It's like going back to an example you gave earlier about a doctor writing a prescription for gabapentin. If you go to that doctor and they spend 30 seconds with you, they don't really examine you too much, and they write you the prescription and then send you on your way, what are the odds that you actually pick up that prescription and follow the advice versus the doctor that sits their time with you, listens to what you have going on, writes a prescription, and then maybe even explains, hey, this is why I think it will help you. This is why I want you to take it. Hey, come back and see me if it's not better and we'll adjust because, hey, maybe we don't get it right all the time, right? When I was a kid, I'd go to the doctor, I'd be sick and they'd be like, hey, We think it's something viral. If it's not better in 3 to 5 days, give us a call. We'll put in an order for an antibiotic because it might be strep throat or something like that, right? They don't always get it right 100% of the time. But if they show that they care, we're okay with that. But for some reason, we have a disconnect in PT where we feel it's different. When in reality, as you mentioned, it's very much the same. You don't have to get it right 100% of the time. You don't have to immediately nail it as a home run shot in 30 seconds right from the start. If you just show that you care about people and that you're willing to throw stuff against the wall over and over again until it sticks, you're going to get there eventually. You just have to care. And that's something that we can't necessarily teach. Like, I wish there was like a course that's like how to care, and then everyone in the world took it, but that doesn't exist. You just have to find that reason, find that why, and just become obsessed with helping others get to that metaphorical high ground of life, I think. Tyler, I feel like we can talk about so many different things, and then this has been such an amazing conversation thus far, especially for the providers who are looking to add more of a blended model to what they're doing that way. And obviously, we've referenced Ray throughout, and I know you do a lot of great work with Ray as well that way. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about what that blended practice model that I've thrown out there a time or two is, and kind of how clinicians who are kind of on the fence might be able to learn more and get more involved on more of a blended model of their practice and care that way?
Yeah, one of the biggest parts of the blended practice model is that you are trading less of your time for money, right? Whether you're in a traditional model or you build your own cash practice, we have to trade our little or literal time, the hour we see that person, for the money they give us, right? We're selling packages, maybe we're taking on more employees, but we're still trading their time for money. And now we have to spend our time managing that person. With the blended practice model, you know, one half of the benefit is that you can provide really good support and still make really good money with less of your time, less of your in-person time, more flexible time, we'll say, and less time overall. The other thing we've talked about, the other half of the benefit here is that you're giving these people support outside of sessions, and that is remote support with a remote prescriptive exercise program, supplemental rehab, corrective exercises, supplemental work that they're doing in addition to whatever their movement practice is. And you can have that asynchronous, regular or synchronous, vice versa, care in between sessions. It allows you to see people less. It allows you to still get really good outcomes, and it gives you the ability to only treat 8 to 12 hours a week, and do other things like write a book or speak or go hiking with your fiance. So I learned this model from, the individual we've been talking about, Ray Gorman. He's a physical therapist himself. And he's went through the same thing we all went through, not really liking his day to day, finding those moments where there was bad traffic in the road or there was bad weather and he had to go on vacation, and he realized, like, I'm going to be short of money because I'm not able to trade my time. And also, I didn't love the outcomes that people were getting. So implementing some sort of remote support where you're giving these people care outside of the session, not only allowed him to make more money in less time, but allowed him to get better outcomes. And I was all about it. So I jumped right in. So if that kind of thing sounds attractive, even in the slightest to you, somewhat adjacent to what you're looking for in terms of your professional structure, I'd highly recommend, heading over to Ray's Instagram, start absorbing some of that content, learning his perspective. He's got tons of free resources on how to start thinking about this process and how to kind of dive in. And then if you want, start a conversation. It's a kind of a low barrier type of conversation just to get an understanding of what this model looks like and if it might work for you.
I think that's such great advice. And I think one of the things that maybe I don't tell people enough is, like, I knew Ray for over a year before I started working with him. And the amount of times we jumped on, yeah, it's like the amount of times we jumped on phone calls, talked about stuff. Like, it's okay to not jump right in on day one. Like, you can kind of test the depth of the river before you go in with both feet here.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think what people need to take away is that it is possible to have your cake and eat it too as a rehab provider. It's possible to build that life that you want. It's just a matter of, are you willing to do the work and surround yourself with the people that make it possible for you? If you're willing to do the work and surround yourself with the right people that have done it before and can help guide you and almost for lack of a better way to put it, Sherpa you along the mountain path that way. If you're willing to find those people and do the work that it takes to get there, anything is possible for you. But if you're not willing to do it, and if you don't care and your give a damn factor is very low and all that way, then maybe it's not for you. And it's okay for this to not be for you. But I'm willing to bet more people than not are interested in it than not interested in it. And I think that, like you mentioned, Ray's a great resource. You can just send him, you can literally just DM him my name, Dan, and that'll kind of kickstart everything for you that way. But obviously, you're a phenomenal resource as well, Tyler. But people want to find out more about you and all the amazing work that you're doing, keep up to date with your book and so on that way. Where can they find you at?
Yeah, so my full name, Tyler Kallasy, dot DPT on Instagram is going to be my most effective kind of source. And that'll lead you to everything else. I have a website and a Substack, a newsletter where I'm talking about all of these things. So check me out on Instagram, shoot me a message, let me know you listen to the podcast. I'd love to know that. And if you have questions about anything, how this process went, how my process was with Ray, clinical care, whatever it may be, I'd be more than happy to chat with anyone about those things.
That's awesome. We'll link to that in the description below. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, you can just click there and see everything Tyler is up to. And one of the other things I really want to encourage people to do is reach out to people like you and Ray and so on that way, because the amount of times I've had people text me and say like, oh my gosh, that was a great podcast episode. And I go, great, send them a DM. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Don't just be a spectator, get involved, be part of the conversation, because I've yet to have someone, and maybe it'll happen, but, I've yet to have something negative come from reaching out to someone that way. I just think there's so much value in networking and connections. And I think in this space more than many, there's this sense of people wanting to help others and do good for them and lift them up that way. So I think definitely reach out to people like you and Ray and so on that way, because the more you reach out to y'all, the better off we're all going to become, I think. Tyler, this is awesome, man. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for everything.
Yeah, man, I loved the chat, everything we talked about. So thanks for having me on, Dan.